Ever wondered how to store and manage multiple values in Python? Well, let's break it down step by step. I'm Mr. Crook, and welcome to Program with Mr. Crook, where we make Python simple for beginners. By the end of this video, you'll understand Python lists, how to create them, modify them, and use them like a pro. What are lists? And what I've got is an identifier just called my_list, and you'll notice that I've used these square brackets. Now, if I just run this code, it's going to output these 3 items. So let's just run that here. Now, we might use lists as a way of organizing multiple entries of data and making it a lot simpler. I always think of it, imagine if you were storing a collection of high scores and you didn't want to create a separate variable for each high score, like high score 01, high score 02. So what you could just do is create an array or a list, as we're going to use here, and you could store all of those high scores within there. Now, a couple of things which we can also do is we can access the individual elements. So I'm going to access the first element. So what I can do is I'm going to say print, and I'm going to say my list, and I'm going to say the position 0. Now this is going to output the first item, so we should get Apple when we run this being output. Now another thing I can also do is if I want to access the last element, I could do position 2, because it goes 0, 1, 2. This is something called 0 indexing. Or if I'm not too sure where that position is, and I just want to output the last item, what I can do is I can actually say -1, and that's going to output the last item which we've got in our list here. So we get cherry again. If I do -2, have a think about what we're going to get. We'll get banana here. So these are some couple of different ways that we can access individual elements. Now what we can also do is we can also modify and update these values. So far I've got these items in my list. Now I'm going to change the first item to be equal to something else. I'm going to make it equal to be a grape. So now when I run this and I say print my list, our first item now, which was apple originally, should be updated with grape. Excellent, so our first one there is where we output that list, and this second one here is where we output this list with that grape being updated. Now, a couple of other things which we can also do is we can use some more commands on here. If I want to add another item, so I'm just going to reference my identifier, which is my list, and I'm going to say append. What I can do is I can add an item onto this. I've decided that I want that apple back on, so I'm going to pass in apple here. And when we now print my list, we've now got apple appended back on to the end. I can use the insert function, so I'm going to say my list, and what I'm going to say is .insert. And what I quite like with using this IDE is it will sometimes give you a couple of hints, so it's saying the index position which we want to do and what the object is. I'm going to insert, I'm going to go for an orange. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the position first, sorry, and then I'm going to say that I want an orange going into here. So let's just run this. We should get an apple added on, and we should get an orange put into position 1, and that means that everything else is going to be shifted down. Excellent. Let's say that I actually want to remove that apple. Actually, let's remove the cherry. I don't particularly like cherries, so I'm going to say my list. And what I can do is I can give the command of remove, and I just need to make sure that it matches one of the items that I've got in there. So I can say cherry. Now when we run it, we should get cherry being removed from there. Now the final thing which I'm going to do is how to iterate through a list. Now there's 2 ways that we can do it within Python. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple with this one that we've got here. Now I'm going to show you the easy way first of all, and then I'm going to show you the more tricky way. I'm going to say for item in my list. So what we're saying is for every item that we've got in my list, I'm going to use some indentation here, and I'm going to print the item itself. So when I run this, it should go apple, banana, cherry as I go through. Now the other way that we can iterate through it is using a for loop again, but I'm going to use something called a len function. This len function is going to tell me how many items I've got in there. Now, if I just show you what I mean with this, and I say print len, and I pass in my list to here, it's going to count the number of items which we've got. It's telling us that we've got 3 items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this value within a variable here. So I'm just going to say, we could just call it length, which might be easier. Now what I'm going to say is I'm going to use a for loop here, and I'm going to say for I in range. The range we're going to say is our length. And what I'm going to say is print, and I'm going to say my list, and I'm going to pass in a variable here between these square brackets. This is going to start with I. So I is going to be set to 0, and it's going to loop this 3 times. So it'll print out each item on that as we go through. So you see it's got our first one, which is probably an easy way of doing it. We've then created a variable called length here by finding out how many items we've got in here. And I've iterated through this using a for loop here. So I said for I in range of length, so start I at 0, and then print out each value which we've got here. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, so it's going to repeat that 3 times, which is what we've got. So what we've looked at so far is we've learned that we can use lists to store multiple values. We can also access, modify, add and remove elements, and we can also loop through them. So what I'd like you guys to do is try and create your own list in Python, share what you've learned within the comments. If you found this video useful, like and subscribe and turn on notifications. And I'm also just going to point you in the direction of my test page, where I've got some programming resources and also some exam style questions for GCSE and A-level students, which you can see just on here. The link will be in the description, and all of my resources are here. See you next time. Bye bye.